Hola, hola, buenas tardes, buenas noches a todo el continente, estamos en vivo. Hola,
Buenas
María Elisa.
noches. Hola, Daniel, ¿cómo estás? Buenas
Muy,
noches,
muy bien,
audiencia
muy
de
bien.
Desde el
Salud.
Arte, Casta Latina.
Hola, hola a todas las personas que nos ven, que nos siguen. Han de decir, ¿qué está pasando? ¿Qué está pasando? ¿Por qué otra vez Daniel? ¿Por qué otra vez María Elisa?
Así es. La
El día de ayer
tecnología funciona hasta que no funciona.
totalmente de acuerdo. El día de ayer tuvimos un problemita técnico que nos hizo ahí pasar algunos momentos de estrés, pero ya estamos de vuelta, María Elisa.
Exacto. Bien.
Así es.
Bueno, pues quiero decir que el mes de junio, Desde el Arte, Casta Latina se viste de colores. Los colores del arco iris, que son algunos de los colores que nos visten a la raza humana. Y también quiero mencionar a CARTAC, Canadian Artists Representation Ontario, que es una organización que nació en los 60 finales y representa a los artistas visuales y a los artistas que trabajan en medios digitales. Yo tuve la oportunidad, junto con un colega francófono, Raymond Simón, de representar el norte de Ontario, precisamente para luchamos por el pago de honorarios por exposición. Es una organización nacional, yo pertenezco al capítulo de Ontario, cada provincia tiene su capítulo, y ellos dan asesoría, dan información sobre los materiales de arte, los que son nocivos, los que no, los lugares dan descuento en las tiendas de arte, también dan información práctica sobre contratos de artistas, recibos, cómo escribir una biografía, un resumen, que llaman aquí resume, y también dan asesoría legal pro bono gratis. Entonces les recomiendo, abajo en la barra, color cempasúchil, color amarillo ocre, allí ven la información de Canadian Artists Representation. También quiero informar que el día 30, es jueves de junio, el último día de junio, vamos a celebrar a las primeras naciones del Canadá, los pueblos indígenas, y tenemos como invitada a Pat Deadman, que es una colega Tuscarora Mohawk de las 6 naciones, es fotografía y arte visual muy interesante. También es actualmente la curadora de Woodland Indigenous Art Center, en donde está llevando a cabo una programación muy, muy bonita, muy importante. El 8 de julio, para cerrar este ciclo de Pien y CARTAC y los pueblos originarios, el 8 de julio, que me parece es viernes, pero hay que checarlo.
Correcto,
viernes. Es viernes, ¿verdad? Tenemos dos actividades en una sola visita a la Galería de Arte de Ontario, AGO. Una va a ser a las 6 de la tarde, que voy a dar yo una visita guiada. Se llama Encuentros, el arte de novohispano o de la Nueva España. Y vamos a visitar las salas de exposición que actualmente tienen una exposición muy bonita de artes de todas las Américas bajo la corona española en la colonia. Y va a ser una visita guiada sencilla a las 6 de la tarde, y luego vamos a ir a ver, a escuchar una presentación especial que nos da Ed Pien en la sala de su exposición que se inaugura ahora el sábado, que se llama Ed Pien, Present, Past, Future. Y es una exposición que tiene que ver con su proyecto de Cuba, que es un proyecto que está desarrollando, no tiene principio, no tiene final, es muy interesante, porque va a haber fotografía, es inmersivo, y va a dar una plática muy interesante él, ¿no? Eso es a las 6:45. Entonces, tenemos para Desde el Arte, Casta Latina, nos dieron 20 boletos gratis. Así que apúntense para que vayamos. La primera, la que doy yo, es en español, y la que va a dar Ed Pien es en inglés. Pueden ir menores de 25 años, con entrada libre, pero tenemos que enviar los nombres de los que van a ir, los asistentes, para que pueda la galería, la institución, emitir boletos que les llaman e-tickets electrónicos. Entonces nos los van a dar. Y bueno, pues con eso vamos ahora a pasar a nuestro invitado especial, que es Pien, Daniel, y me da mucho gusto presentarlo. Es un muy reconocido artista contemporáneo, originario de Taipei, en Taiwán, y vive en Canadá, en Toronto, desde hace mucho tiempo. Llegó con su familia a los 11 años como inmigrante a este país y ha desarrollado una obra, un corpus de obra plástica increíble, impresionante. Con él tuve la ocasión de trabajar en 3 exposiciones, trabajamos juntos y bueno, ya lo vamos a escuchar, Daniel.
Así es. Pues sin más ni más, muchas gracias, María Elisa. Ya nos platicaste de, pues, de todo lo que se viene en Desde el Arte. Gracias por estar partícipe, siempre presente, apoyando a esta comunidad latina.
No,
Estos
con
20
mucho gusto.
boletos, estos 20 boletos gratis al Hago, que va a ser el viernes 8 de julio. Todas las personas que quieran ir, solamente escríbanos en Casta Latina, en cualquiera de nuestras 6 redes sociales, y pues los boletos son suyos. Necesitamos simplemente la confirmación de que sí van a estar en ese día, y pues tal como lo platicó María Elisa, ¿no? Va a ser un evento bastante lindo, porque no es solamente el boleto gratis y pues entra a todo el museo, sino esta es una experiencia muy única, porque la maestra María Elisa de Villa desde las 6 de la tarde va a iniciar el recorrido a través del museo, y se va a terminar con la presencia nada más y nada menos de este invitado que tuvimos el honor de contar con su presencia el día de ayer. Debido a los problemas técnicos, tuvimos que grabarle esta entrevista, así que a partir de ahorita se quedan con la entrevista con Pien y con María Elisa de Villa. Así que muchas gracias, María Elisa. Nos vemos el 30.
Daniel, muchas gracias.
Nos vemos el 30 de julio en vivo para festejar a nuestras naciones.
Vale, sí.
Nos vemos y aquí los dejamos con la entrevista.
Claro que sí. Bueno, voy a leerles la biografía de Ed en inglés. Está aprendiendo español, pero ahorita va a ser en inglés. Ed Pien was born in Taipei, Taiwan. Ed immigrated with his family to London, Ontario when he was 11 years old. He received an honors Bachelor of Fine Arts degree from Western University, and in 1984, an EMFA from York University. He presently lives and works in Toronto. In his nearly 4-decade career, Pien has shown extensively both nationally and internationally in venues that include the Drawing Center in New York City, the Victoria and Albert Museum in London, the Canadian Cultural Center in Paris, the Goethe Institute in Berlin, the Vancouver Art Gallery, the Art Gallery of Greater Victoria, the Art Gallery of Montreal, Songshuang Art Center in Beijing, the National Art Gallery of Canada, as well as Oboro in Montreal. He has participated in the 2000 and 2002 Montreal Biennales, the 18th edition of the Sydney Biennale of Canada at Mass MoCA. Pien also presented work at the 5th edition of the Moscow Biennale in 2013 and at the Beijing Biennale in 2015. In 2017, he participated in the Curitiba Bienal in Brazil, and in 2020, the Bienal Internacional de Asunción, Paraguay. One of his recent solo exhibitions, entitled Shadowed Land, presented at the Art Gallery of Mississauga and the Thames Art Gallery, explores memory, loss, trauma, marginalization, resilience, and empathy. Since 2014, Pien has been passionately involved in an ongoing project with elders in San Agustin, Cuba, exploring together the notion of time over time. This ongoing project will be presented in a solo exhibition at the Art Gallery of Ontario, which opens this Saturday, and we'll all be there. His work is collected widely and include Frac, Lorraine in Metz, France, Art Gallery of Greater Victoria, the National Art Gallery of Canada, Art Gallery of Ontario, Musée d'Art Contemporain de Montréal, Musée des Beaux-Arts de Montréal, Mendel Art Gallery, Weatherspoon Art Museum, University of North Carolina, Greensboro, North Carolina, as well as other institutions and private collections. Pien is represented by Pierre-François Wallet, Art Contemporáneo in Montreal, Birch Contemporary in Toronto, and Gallery Maurice van der Laar in The Hague. Pien was a visiting artist at Concordia University in 2015 and in 2016 has been teaching part-time at the University of Toronto. The force of art, the art of drawing, la fuerza del arte, el arte del dibujo. One of our great drawers in the 20th century, American Rico Lebrun, as all great artists, considered that drawing is to unfold form until the drawing itself breathes its own air. I like to think that the idea in drawing is for form to win over content. The drawings of Ed Pien and his drawing-based large-scale installations are a gorgeous example of the art of drawing. You draw inspiration, among others, from nature, la naturaleza, the rich Asian tradition of works on paper and with paper, the chinoiserie, decorative patterns, the paper cuts, from water, agua, as material that wants to escape and not be captured, as political agent, as muse and collaborator, from time, tiempo, measured or seen through the events that take place, the passage of time as told by the people who have lived it, as in your Cuba project, Ed Pien, present, past, future, where you weave together stories shared by the elders in your project. But who is Ed Pien? The man, the artist? How does he inhabit space? How does his art discourse define space? How is a universe populated by hybrid human and ghost-like or dream-like creatures and hybrid plant figures inhabit his world? His chosen material, which is paper, and drawing, his chosen art form. Ed.
Thank you, Maria. That was an amazing introduction. I never heard of that before.
You are an amazing artist.
Likewise. Gracias. I'm touched.
A ti, we're honored to have you from Desde el Arte, Casta Latina.
Thank you so much. It's an honor.
It's an honor for us. And could you expand a little bit or begin with one of the three lines that I arbitrarily chose, but you can expand because you know your work way better than I do. So we talked about water, we talked about time, we talked about nature and the Asian tradition in paper.
Sure. Well, I'll start off with what is the earliest, which is my interest in going back to Taiwan to research the culture that I left when I was 11 years old. And because I was quite young, everything that I soaked in, I would say is more emotional than intellectual. So in that way, it not only inhabits my mind, but it inhabits my body as well. So it was really wonderful to go back and re-engage, kind of witness, reconnect with things that I had encountered before when I was young. But going back as an adult, it's completely different because now I'm using my mind in a different way and using my memory to kind of put everything together again. When I went back, it was actually researching into ghosts. And the reason I wanted to go back to research ghosts is because I had done a series of drawings, like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of drawings. And by making lots of work, in a way, you see how the work is kind of responding or reflecting who you are. So I realized deep inside, I'm a person that has vulnerabilities, has fears, and I wanted to research and find out where all that came from. So I figured I should go back to where I was born in Taiwan. And so I started to research into different religious ceremonies, different images of hell scrolls, different images of gods and demons, just to get a better sense of why and how I was propelled by these, I would say, cultural conditions to make me who I am. So I was especially interested in ghosts.
Oh, you bet they were. Did you have surprises or did you have re-encounters?
I had no encounters with ghosts, but I have met people who have seen ghosts. So for me, ghosts, whether they exist or not, it's not an issue. It's the fact that we have a name for them. Some people believe in them, and if someone tells me that they they believe in ghosts, I would say ghosts exist for them. So in a way, even well, I have seen ghosts once, but I don't know whether or not yes, and I don't know whether that was just my imagination. So I feel that if I were to be able to encounter ghosts several times, then I can sort of say yes, they exist. So in that moment, I just feel I just woke up from a nap and I saw two kids in my room and I asked them to leave because they didn't belong there. They were from they're from the turn of the century. So I was at York University actually, yeah, staying at the residence over there. So for me, ghost is a starting point to really think about what is it that makes us afraid as human beings. Because I feel in this world, we are compelled to act based on certain conditions, certain beliefs, certain feelings. And sometimes when people feel vulnerable, when they're afraid of something, they act in a way that seems to be very negative. So I see people like Putin, who is terrified of losing his power. So instead of showing his vulnerabilities and something else that's much more human, he decides to be more tyrannical, to show his power, to show his evilness. And I just feel like if fear wasn't a factor, if vulnerability wasn't a factor, he would act very differently as a human being.
Of course, he has a certain, when you talk about this, a certain kind of vulnerability. He feels cornered,
Mhm.
like a little animal. And when he's cornered, he's going to attack.
That's right. Obviously, he's much more complex than that. I mean, his ego's in the way. Other things are at play. The economics, his reputation, whatever it is, it's complicated. But I would say fear is one of the basic instincts that propel us to act in the ways we act.
That's
So,
very, very true. A friend of mine once told me, do not worry about others' fears. Worry about your own. And this is
that's
so
right.
very true. We have
That's
to,
right. That's right.
But I am wondering these ghost-like, I call them ghost-like, dream-like figures, hybrid human figures and plant life that you draw. Where do they come from?
Well, it really
Where
is.
to go?
That's right. I would say it's a really good question, and we are a sum total of our exposures to the environment, to our culture, to different experiences. So I always say that if I lived in a white room and I was raised in a white room, I would just present a white piece of paper to you and say that's my work. but we live in a world where we see so many different visuals, other things we read, well, we listen to music. So all those things have impacts on us as human beings. And so I would say my images come from having been exposed to a myriad of images, visuals, ideas, and stories, and then using my imagination and using a very process-based work in my drawing that these monsters, these ghosts arrive as visuals, as drawings in my exploration of what constitutes this otherness. So this otherness is very different from the other that we talk about, which is like maybe the dominant white society saying this other, which could be BIPOC. But for us as a collective, as human beings, we have this other, something that's like us but not quite, and then something that we fear. Maybe some people detest. Some people just want to exorcise and get them out of our environment. So I'm interested in how, as human beings, we not only perceive who the other is, the differences, but also how we use ghosts as a way to say who we are. So it's a construction, both as we construct the ghosts and both as we construct ourselves through having to construct something else.
And like Guillermo del Toro, the director, the movie director, the Mexican movie director, The Shape of Water, and other wonderful themes,
Yes.
he portrays monsters as very gentle, beautiful, sensual, sensitive creatures.
That's right. That's right.
And in a way, and portrays the human being very opposed to that.
Right.
And in your work, I see you draw all these creatures that you call monsters,
Yes.
ghosts,
Mhm.
human hybrids,
Mhm.
with a lot of colors,
Mhm.
many colors.
Yes.
And we have in Mexico the sugar skulls that come in colorful, so that they are beautiful.
Mhm.
Do you consider your monsters and your ghost-like hybrid creatures beautiful?
Yes, in their own way, in the sense that I have to tell you a story. So when I was younger, living in Taiwan as a child, I walked with my family past a temple, and outside there was a statue of this really scary figure, deity. And my parents said, "Don't be afraid. The scarier this entity is, the more mighty, the more powerful he or she or they are there to protect you." So at that moment, I realized that being strange or different and monstrous and maybe scary doesn't necessarily equate to being evil. So because I came to Canada as a immigrant, and Canada at the time in the 1960s, when 69 is when I arrived, I just felt I was out of place. I was the other, and so yeah. So I'm interested in celebrating otherness. In that, in my monsters, they defy expectations. They defy what constitutes normality. So when you look at the drawings and you see this hybridized creature, and you say, "Why does it have three eyes?" They can turn around and say to you, "Why do you have only two eyes?" So it's a way of thinking about what makes things, how we perceive the other. So, for instance, a really interesting scholar from the year 200, he's from China. When he talks about hybridized creatures and monsters, he says, "A thing in itself, it's not strange. It is I who makes it strange." And I love that, because that's indeed what's happening. We are always, always constructing the other in order to, in a way, either we align with them, or we separate ourselves from them. So the more strange or the more monstrous, then by saying they're just awful, then we can say, "Oh, we're good and beautiful," or whatever. So there's a strategy some people use when they start to construct this otherness. And Edward Said talked about that when he talks about Orientalism, how the West, in a way, wanted to subdue the East just by painting them as very docile people. So in contrast, the West becomes this more powerful, intellectual, civilized nations.
Which comes from the root of the otherness, la otredad,
Mm-hmm.
comes from Greece. That the only way to define the other was precisely that.
I see.
Find him as another, the other,
right,
which is automatically inferior to you,
That's right.
to I,
That's
that was the otredad. It's a very interesting concept that is being, right now, they're doing a lot of work on this, a lot of research on this in Mexico, because we have this la otredad. We are indigenous, we are Spaniards, we are mestizo, we are all of that. But we still look upon those that are darker as los otros.
Okay.
And here in Canada, I also came in 1961 as an immigrant, where at the time they had the DP. They called us DP, displaced person. I did not know what DP was. So I asked my husband, Canadian husband, and he explained it to me, and I thought, I am not displaced. But yes, we are displaced because we're in another place.
I see.
However, that it has changed a lot in Canada. But let's talk about your form, the form.
Okay.
Would you agree that form has to win over content? Or is it the same to you? Is it both together?
I think when I was younger, I tend to think of situations as being black and white. But as I grow older, I feel sometimes the opposites are very similar. So in this case, I feel I can't say one is better than the other. There's no competition between form and content. I would say some of the strongest works, if the form, so I would say the form is there. That's what we see. That's what we first experience. So that's what seduces us.
Yes.
But if there's something behind it that gives it a meaning that's more profound, or profound than expected, then that gives the work even a much more richness, much more, I would say, poignancy, or just potential to engage with the viewer. So I tend to feel that if I can marry content and form together, then I've succeeded in what I'm trying to convey. And my work isn't about explaining things to people. My work is really about opening up spaces for people to really use their own experiences and their own memories and encounters with this thing in front of them, to kind of negotiate, even if it's for 5 minutes or 10 minutes, And sometimes I feel when you live with the work, you can really negotiate with it, because as you change over the course of different days, that work really changes with you. It responds to your mood, your mental states of being, your intellectual states of being, in very, very responsive ways. I can't really explain it, but by living with work is very different from just going to a gallery to look at works.
Of course. But I was thinking in terms like, we have a friend, a mutual friend, you and I, Oscar Camilo de las Flores.
Sí.
And what I find fascinating in his work and your work is that both, I look at it and his looks like a beautiful, almost lace-like
Yes.
piece of work. And when you take a second lecture, a second look, a second reading, and you start to process what the content of that form is, then it takes you somewhere else. With you, it's the same feeling that I have. I mean, different, but I see your work, your drawings, some of them, as almost palatable, because it takes me to my own world, which is an encounter, like you were talking about, experiencing the art form versus having it explained to you, which I very much believe in. To establish an encounter, you're talking about the open work, like Umberto Eco, ¿verdad? Ópera abierta, apertura de ópera, means the open work that calls for the spectator to establish an encounter with it and a dialogue with the work. But that I find fascinating in your work, that when I look at it, it takes me to my world, and to the sugar skulls. So it's palatable because they are so pretty, they're so beautiful, all the colors. And all these figures are sometimes suspended in air, sometimes like in a spider web, caught, and they swing, they move, there's motion. And not until I go in and really look do I see that, like you say, they're monsters, but they're still beautiful.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I always say I want to make work that can seduce a viewer, and then once they're seduced, they can go and be engaged in different ways, deeper ways, or whatever ways, So it has to be more than surface for me.
Well, you accomplish it because you seduce us, very much so. Could you talk to us about your Cuba project for our audience, which is mostly Latin American?
Yes, I'll be very happy to do so. I began the project in 2014 as an invitation by a curator, a production person from El Igual. Her name is Catherine Sicot. She had been working in Cuba, in Havana.
Yes.
So she asked me to go and make some project within a small community called Saint Augustine. So initially, I declined her invitation. I've never been to Cuba. It seems so foreign. It seems so different from my culture. And also, I don't speak the language. And I also felt I didn't want to be a tourist artist. I didn't want to go there, work on a social-based practice work, and then come back and pat myself on the back and say, oh, look, Ed, look what you've done. But through different circumstances, which I won't bore you here with it, I went back to Catherine and I said, with your permission and with a group's permission, I would like to work with a small number of elders, and together we would explore the idea of time. Now, in order to make it more than just a one-off trip, one-off project, I also added that with their permission, the project will continue until either they die or I die, or when they lose interest. So that was my condition. Working with older people, we would explore the idea of time, and then we would just do it till end of time or our time.
And you did a lot of photography.
Yes, I also, this project is very collaborative. I work with my elders. There were 13 to start. I also have a translator. I have a photographer, a video person, and sometimes I hire or invite different people to come and help to document or capture the moment that we are engaging in conversations and different activities. So I took some of the pictures. Claudio took lots of the pictures. Most of the time, I'm kind of negotiating, videotaping, and talking, and he's kind of going around taking pictures. But I have amassed many pictures on my own as well. So whenever I present the photos, I always acknowledge the person that have taken the photograph, even though it's considered my work. I feel collectively it is a work that has been done by many people, and it would not have been possible just by myself to realize.
Right. That is very interesting. So when we go on Saturday, I'm coming with my two daughters.
Great, thank you.
And when we go as a group from Casta Latina on the 8th, what are we going to look at?
Wow. Well, it may be a surprise because, well, as I mentioned, I've been exploring the idea of time with these elders, and it's not just not what we're thinking what time means. When I first started the project, that's what I was asking them. Very kind of pedantic questions. What do you think future is? What do you think present is? What do you think past is? But my strategy was to go back and ask the same questions all the time, and then adding new questions based on how they answer. But also over time, people's ideas change, or their memories falter, so they give me different answers. So for instance, I would ask, so you're 80 years old, how old do you feel inside? And some people say, well, I'm 80, but I feel 60. So Barroso, for instance, he at the time when I met him, he was 72 years old. He was said, but I'm strong. I have tengo anima,
Yes.
and he said, I feel 50. But recently, and he kept this going for several years. He'll say, no, I'm 75. I still feel like I'm 50 years old. But recently, when I went back because of the pandemic, and he also just found out he had spine cancer, which is it's checked, so he's not deteriorating anymore. But he says, now I'm 78 years old, and I have to say, I feel like I'm 75. So that's really kind of tragic in a way, because he's now accepting his age with how he feels. And also, I have people like Gladys, who I feel she doesn't lie, but she tells you how old she feels based on how old she feels. So, for instance, the first time I met her, she was 68. It may have been true. I thought she was older, but I didn't. I'm not judging. I'm just letting people speak.
Mm-hmm.
And the second time when I met her, she was 58 years old. And the third time when I met her, she was 52. So every time I met her, she became younger. So time is very subjective, as we all know. I mean, it has its own rhythm, its own way of proceeding into the future. But for us, who actually have to experience time, when you experience time, time becomes something else. Time's pace isn't aligned with the way a clock aligns with time. So when she says she's younger, I accept her statement and see that as being true, because it's a subjective time. It's not a practical, objective time. And that's what we live with. Sometimes we need objective time to move forward. Sometimes we need to have the subjective time to really experience the world in our own ways, on our own terms, and go by our own rhythms. That's inside of an imposed time.
Right. Is this your first experience in Latin America? Oh, no, you went to Mexico. I remember.
Yeah, but those were early days when I had nada. I couldn't speak. I couldn't see no puedo hablar, español. So when I was in Mexico, I would go into Chinese restaurants because I knew the foods that I can order.
Oh, Ed, honestly. Oh.
Anyway.
That's around about the time when we worked together on a couple of projects in Montreal and at Hard House with Judith Schwartz.
Yes.
And where are you going from here?
Wow.
Is this a major? Do you consider this a major exhibition at EGO right now?
I think so. I mean, the space
Yes.
is not big. The space is not big, but it's a solo exhibition, and it
Yes.
shows the work since 2014. And the work, some of the works there are from this year, so it's a project that continues. And I've been to Cuba already 3 times this year, and I plan on going back in October again. So, I have many ideas of what I would like to do in terms of projects. But can I just give you one more example of one of the?
Yes,
Okay,
please.
well, they're all of them are focusing on what time means. So I'm also interested in how time impacts people. Right? It's not just about what we do in time. It's not about what we think about time, but it's also about how time changes us, makes us into who we are in the present. So, for instance, I did a project where I would go and celebrate people's birthdays along with their family, and that would be documented. And then in this series of videos, you'll see that they have a voiceover. You can see their face like a cell phone on the upper left corner of the video, and they're looking at themselves being celebrated on, and it took 3 or 4 years ago. So they're making a comment on what they see. And simultaneously, you see their older self and their younger self in the screen, and one is making comment, and sometimes they talk over each other. They'll say, "I'm getting ready for the birthday," and then the other says, "Hey, oh, look, I'm getting ready for the birthday." The two, they're having a conversation in a time that has been collapsed through media technology. So I find that really interesting.
It is fascinating, very interesting. So you're going to continue with this project, and are you going to continue working with paper?
Yes,
with
of
your
course.
love for paper?
Well, in terms of what defines me as an artist, and I guess some people feel you have to pursue and explore something to death. So if you work with painting, you just paint until you have a retrospective, and I don't know what, but
You fall over.
I guess I'm a creature that's very curious. So I'm interested in different forms of expression, and I feel I'm not tied to one particular medium, because there are other ways of telling stories. There are more effective ways of using other technologies or different
Right.
sculpture, whatever it is, to share my experience, share my view of the world. So in the installation, you'll see furniture, lots of photographs, lots of video, and a 75-inch flat screen TV also of a review kind of format.
Wonderful. We're looking forward to it.
Thank you so much.
You're going to keep growing. I was telling Daniel, we're all very impressed with your curriculum and where you've been. I told him, yes, he is. And I predict that you will go far.
Oh, thank you. That's so kind of you.
Big creator.
Oh.
You're going to reach that star. Yes.
Well, I don't know what that star is, but I feel just being satisfied with working and doing what I want to do is already the star.
Yes.
So I just find every day is joyful. Every day is, it's not always. It's hectic. It's I would say anxious sometimes, because you're working with deadlines. But being an artist is to work towards the unknown. So
yes.
we have a fear of not knowing where to go, but that is the thrill of it. That is what excites us. That's what keeps us moving towards our thing. So I live with that on not a daily basis, but more often than not. So it's something I accept, and it's something I look forward to, actually. This unexpectedness, chance encounters, accidents, mistakes, they all add to what I'm trying to figure out, so.
Accidents and going to the forest.
Yeah.
With that note, I would like to end it there, because that is beautiful. That's a beautiful way of explaining your work.
Thank you so much.
Explaining your feeling of your work, that you want to keep going into the unknown. That's exciting.
Yes, it is.
If you can tell young people, young Latin Americans living in Toronto and in Montreal, who are interested in the arts, what would your advice be for young men and women?
Right. Well, it's literally make stuff. It may be really bad to start. It may be really good to start, but you have to keep making stuff, because by making the stuff, they become these paving stones that you put in front of you. and you kind of take a step further, and you take a step further based on what you make. They will give you a sense of where your work is going. You can't predict where it's going. You have to let it unfold through process. It's through making. It's through making mistakes. It's through having engagements and encounters with people in the world. And don't try to make something always thinking, well, is this right or is this acceptable? You don't want to be making work while looking back behind your shoulders. You just do it because it feels right. You just want to keep going, and then something may happen. There's no promises. It's not a Hollywood story. It's not a Hollywood movie. You do it because you want to, not because you feel that it's going to make you into a superstar or it's going to make you lots of money. That the reward, the satisfaction has to be coming from the inside. It's about really just finding and encountering the unexpected, to challenge yourself, to move forward in your thinking, your own making, and to be immersed in joy of making and doing and sharing.
Wonderful. Your favorite artist?
Wow, that's hard. There's so many artists out there that are making really good work. Okay, so she's one of many. So I do have a lot of different artists because they are all very good in their own way. But the first one that came into my mind is Elijah Clark. She's a Brazilian artist. She's considered a concrete artist, so meaning that when she puts something down, that's what it represents. And I loved her play with the material, the way she made clothing that were social practice based, where you kind of join with other people in the same clothing to experience different sensory experiences. So I think she was ahead of her time. That she made really good work. She made sculptures that were kind of transformable as well. So she really explored material. She really played with social practice, and I just think, yeah, I like her way of working, moving forward, and she wasn't copying anyone. She was really just being herself.
Herself. Your favorite music?
Oh my God.
Oh my God.
Well, I've been to a few funerals, so I'm saying, so what do I want played? So one of the music that I really like is from Bjork. So I will play something by Bjork. Again, she's herself. She doesn't fall into the category of the traditional beauty. She can put on makeup and clothing and costumes to make herself into something strange and grotesque in a way, but so seductive and amazing. She doesn't look back behind her shoulders either. So I think I would pick something from her, Bjork.
Okay. Pien, we thank you very much. It's been an honor, and we're looking forward to seeing you on Saturday at your exhibition and on the 8th of July with our group.
Yes.
Muchas gracias, Eduardo. Muchas gracias.
Thank you so much, Maria. Muchas gracias. Okay. Ciao, ciao.